Hello, and welcome to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast presented to you by the GSMC Network. I'm your host, Jake Daly. We got a great show for you today. Today is Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025, obviously. We're going to cover a couple different things today. First, we're going to go over some spring visits for some high quality recruits, some 5 stars, some high 4 stars. Going to go over kind of who they're looking at in the spring and what their decision might be. We're also going to talk a little bit about recent pro days, guys trying to go to the NFL that had their college pro days, some of the performances there, some good ones, some bad ones. And then we're also going to look at a little, we're going to look at some recruits that have already committed for the 2026 Navy All-American Bowl. Some of those guys that are probably going to see on Saturdays, potentially even on Sundays in the future. And then lastly, we're going to go over some Biletnikoff Award watch lists, guys that I think receivers that really have a chance to be the top receiver in the nation this upcoming year. And so before we do all that, before we get into our show, I'd just like to remind everyone that if you've got a question during the show, we want to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great. We thrive on your energy, on your insights, and whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or even just an opinion that you have that you need to share, don't hesitate to drop that in the chat. Now, if you want to make sure, absolutely sure, that your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Just use the super chat feature. Just click the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content that you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button, and let's keep the show as interactive and as exciting as possible. And if you prefer to, you can also go to gsmcsport.net to tip, donate, and leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we are so thankful to have you as a part of our GSMC community. Now, let's get into some of the big top high school recruits that are kind of starting to go on their visits and narrow down their list of schools. So up first, we have quarterback Jared Curtis, number 1 quarterback in the country, depending on who you ask, in the 2026 class. This kid's a stud, 6'4", 225. He's from Nashville, plays for Nashville Christian, and just a strong-arm quarterback. He can sling the ball across multiple levels of the field. He can pretty much make every throw with his arm. This guy's got a cannon. He does show some athletic ability by scrambling when he needs to, but this isn't a guy that you should consider a true dual threat quarterback. This guy is a pocket passer. He can sling the rock, and he's going to get it to his receivers across the field, across many levels, short, intermediate, deep. He's got a nice touch on his deep ball, and this is a guy that programs really, really want right now. It sounds like his decision is down to either Georgia or Oregon. So he previously decommitted from Georgia in October of this year, but they're still in his list. They're still in contention for him. It's really them or Oregon right now. So he did visit both programs in March, but he is going to go back to Georgia for their spring game on April 12th, next weekend. And he also said that he could visit Oregon again before his decision is made. Now, recently, since his decommitment in October, Oregon has been dominating this race. They've definitely been the lead dog. They're up in front right now. And it kind of sounds like they've been trying to sell him on his fit in their offense and also just the presence of Coach Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning is a young, dynamic coach who has had success as a head coach since he got hired at Oregon. After being Georgia's defensive coordinator under Kirby Smart, had a lot of success at Georgia. And again, this is a guy that knows the Georgia program inside and out. So he knows what Kirby Smart's going to say to this kid. And he also is going to try to combat that and say, hey, come play for me on the West Coast. We're in the Big Ten now. We can really do some things. We can make something happen. We were the number one team in the country this year, going into the playoff, and we can have sustained success under you. But Georgia should not be discounted here. Georgia has been recruiting Jared Curtis for years, that he's really close with their staff. They have some really deep commitments and relationships with the Curtis family, with Jared himself, and this is a staff that knows this kid inside and out. So I wouldn't count out Georgia in this race. It's definitely going to be tight, though. It's going to be down to the wire. His decision day is set for May 5th, so we still got about a month before he's going to commit and tell us where he's going to play the next 3 years. Maybe 1, maybe 2, depending on the portal. But at least for his initial commitment, it's going to be May 5th is when we're going to find out about Jared Curtis. And that's going to be a big domino, especially for the other quarterbacks in the class. Now, another quarterback that he is committed somewhere, but his name's kind of been thrown out here and there, is Keisean Henderson. Now, this kid, true dual threat quarterback. This is a 5-star. He's from Houston. He is committed verbally to Houston. It's been a pretty firm commitment, but these programs are still trying to get in there. He won the MVP of this year's Navy All-American game, really showed out in that game, balled out, had a great performance, and it really opened some eyes. So this is also a kid where, while he is a 5-star, he's raw. He is going to need time to develop, to really learn a college system, develop as a quarterback. But this is a kid that, if everything clicks, the talent, the intangibles, this kid can be dynamic, and he can really be something special at the quarterback position. And this is why Houston's really trying so hard to keep him as a commitment. But this isn't done until it's done. There are schools still trying to flip him, still in regular contact. Auburn, Florida State, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, they're all still talking to him regularly. Obviously, 2 of those are the Jared Curtis programs in Georgia and Oregon. So that's why I was saying that Jared Curtis' decision could really change or alter the landscape of quarterback commitments in this class. But Keisean Henderson is still somebody that these teams want. They want to see him in their program, in their locker room, because he is that dynamic and he does have that much potential. But so while he still is a Houston commit, this is going to be a name to watch. He doesn't have any official visits set for the spring. He hasn't said he's going to visit anywhere else besides Houston. But this is one that, hey, it might be late April and he decides to take a visit somewhere. So for right now, he's still a Houston commit. Still seems pretty firm in that, but schools are really trying to get him. And another name that is a firm commit right now, but schools are really trying hard, is Chris Henry Jr. Obviously, son of former NFL player Chris Henry. He's the number 1 receiver in the country. Number 1 or number 2, depending on what recruiting site you look at. But this kid is a freak of nature. He's a 6'6" as a wide receiver, smooth route runner, probably one of the best wide receiver prospects to come out in the past 4 or 5 years. And this kid's just a freak. He's a consensus top 5 recruit pretty much everywhere that you look. And he has been an Ohio State pledge since 2023. So he's been an Ohio State commit for a long time. This is a kid that grew up outside Cincinnati, so he did have those Ohio roots. Obviously, his dad played for the Bengals, but he did transfer last year. He's now in California on the West Coast playing for Powerhouse Mater Dei, one of the best programs in the country. And this is going to be a guy, it's probably going to come down to Ohio State or Oregon with Chris Henry. Now, he has a couple other schools that are trying to get him, trying to talk to him. USC, Miami, they're still in play here, and he has set an official visit for Oregon, USC, and Miami, as well as Ohio State. All those three schools he's going to be touring from May 30th to June 13th, and he has his last official in Columbus on June 20th. Now, I really don't think this is going to be a guy that probably sways from his Ohio State commitment just because of the position history, the presence of Coach Brian Hartline, who he has a really great relationship with, who is now the offensive coordinator there, and also the NIL money that comes out of Ohio State. Chris Henry, if he wants the bag, Columbus is going to give it to him. So it's probably going to come down to Ohio State or Oregon, it sounds like. But this is another thing with Chris Henry. He maintained through his whole recruiting process that even while he was firm on Ohio State, one, it was going to be really hard to sway him from that commitment, and two, he was always going to take official visits in the spring, despite his commitment. So we're not necessarily surprised that Chris Henry is taking visits, but just the name and just the caliber of prospect that he is, this is a guy that everyone wants. So that's another one to look at, a potential flip. I really don't honestly see that one going Oregon's way. I could see him in Columbus. I really think that's the most likely outcome here, but we don't know. Another name, too, is Jett Washington. Now, this is ESPN's number 20 overall player and number 1 safety in the 2026 class. Interesting thing with Jett Washington, he does play for Bishop Gorman, powerhouse out of Vegas. He's also a basketball player. He's a shooting guard on their basketball team for Bishop Gorman. They've had a lot of success. So his recruitment hasn't really picked up in the fall or in the winter, just because of the basketball season and him not being able to take visits, not being able to really stay in contact with those coaches from there. The other thing with Jett Washington, I think, is the big number is 6'5". This kid is a 6'5" safety. You really never see that. That's crazy positional height at this level, or really at any level. Even in the NFL, there's only a couple safeties that are 6'3", 6'4". So the fact that he's 6'5" is really interesting. He does have a couple schools in his top schools. He's got Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Texas A&M, and USC. Those are his tops right now. And he said he wants to start whittling down his list after he's doing both non-official and official visits on these campuses throughout the spring. Another interesting tidbit, he's the nephew of Kobe Bryant, probably why he's so interested in basketball. But he's already visited Alabama and Oregon, which kind of makes them early frontrunners right now. But he still has to go to all these other schools. I wouldn't count USC out yet. Obviously, he's from Vegas, West Coast, and he was just on campus at USC this past weekend. So I think they could probably make up ground quickly. It sounds like they got in late on his recruitment just because of basketball and not really pushing to recruit him. But I could really see that being a program where it makes a lot of sense, and this is a kid that they're really going to want to go for and really going to try to get. The one thing that remains to be seen with Jett Washington is what position is he going to play at the next level. Obviously, with that height, there's a couple different ways. He does play both sides of the ball for Bishop Gorman. We've seen him at wide receiver before, mostly as a safety. He has talent on both sides. I think his likely destination is in the defense. My thing, though, is I wonder, will he bump up to linebacker at one point? I could really see him being a safety convert to linebacker. Happens a decent amount, more than you think. Sonny Styles just did it in Columbus this past year or two, where he transitioned from full-time safety to now playing linebacker and starring at linebacker for Ohio State. So obviously Jett Washington has the frame, has the body to be able to add on some mass, probably 20, 30 pounds, to play linebacker at the next level. It just depends on where he's going to go and what that coaching staff wants to do with him. And my last name for spring visits to keep an eye on is Jackson Cantwell. Now, this kid is an offensive tackle, and he's 6'8", huge body, and currently the number 4 overall prospect by ESPN. He's been recruited by all the elite programs, the guys that you normally see in on offensive linemen, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Miami, and also Missouri's on his list, as well as Oregon. Oregon and Georgia are presumed to be the front runners for him right now. However, Cantwell has insisted throughout his recruitment that there is no sole leader in this process. As he's going to go through the summer, he's going to try to whittle it down a little bit, and he's just been prepping for his official visits with these 6 schools. So he claims that there's no front runner. We shall see. I want to take the kid at his face value, at his word. I believe that if he doesn't know where he wants to go to school, he doesn't know where he wants to go to school. But this is a kid that is going to be a big, big pickup for one of those schools that are trying to produce offensive linemen. And I could really see Missouri actually making it at least into his top 3 or 4. He's from Missouri, and Missouri tends to hit on one big in-state talent every couple of years, a high 4-star, a 5-star. They tend to get one every few years. I could really see them trying to throw money at Jackson Cantwell to be that anchor of this year's class and just round out what they're trying to do at Missouri. So now we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to look at a little bit at the performances from some of the pro days that happened this past week or two, kind of see who did well, who did not, and we're just going to talk about it a little bit. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back shortly on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. Some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast. And before we talk our next segment, our spring pro days, I just want to quickly remind everybody again that this show is all about you. We love hearing your thoughts, your questions, and your opinions as we dive into the latest sports action. Whether you've got a burning question, a bold prediction, or just want to shout out your favorite player, don't hold back. Drop it in the chat. Your voice adds so much to the conversation, and we're here to just make sure that it's heard. But if you really want to make sure your message stands out, here's how you can guarantee it gets on the show. Use the super chat feature. Just click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box, send in your message, and it's a surefire way to get our attention. Not only does our super chat get you a spotlight on the show, but it also just help this channel keep going and helps us give you more of the content that you love. We're building something special here, and we couldn't do it without you. So jump in, join the conversation, send those super chats, and let's make the show even better together. If you'd rather not use super chat, you can always go to gsmcsport.net to tip, donate, and leave your comment or question there. We're so grateful for you, to have you here, and to have your ongoing support for our show. And be sure to stick around for my last segment where I'm going to highlight some potential Blitnikoff winners. But first, we're going to talk a little about some of the fallout from the pro days that have happened in the past week or so. There's been some really interesting ones. Obviously, this is a little more draft-oriented, but these guys were still elite college players. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of them. So, Jalen Milroe is probably the big name this week from spring days. He put on a show at Alabama's Pro Day this year. Ran an official 40 at 4.40 with a 10-yard split of 1.44, which those are just freakish numbers for a quarterback. Really showcased his elite speed, his elite movement skills at the quarterback position. But so it's clear that his athletics are going to play at the NFL level. Jalen Milroe, world-class athlete. That is not the question. That's not the issue. That's not the concern with him. His concern is really more on still his actual quarterback play. Will he be able to make on-time throws? Will he be able to be accurate? Will he be able to make those throws and make those reads at the NFL level that he needs to? That's what remains to be seen with him. But he did not hurt himself with this pro day performance. Obviously, the throws in pro days are pretty scripted, so it's kind of hard to judge quarterbacks from those throws, those pro days, just because they're scripted. You're running with your own receivers from college. They're probably going to help you out. They know where your balls are going to be thrown. They know if it's going to be behind them, if it's going to be in front of them, if it's going to be high, low. Those guys are going to help you out. So throwing is really not the big thing here with quarterbacks in pro days. But still, Jalen Milroe having those elite athletic numbers really helps his case. I think it probably solidifies him as at least around 4 pick. I would say he's probably going to be a day 2 guy, probably 3rd round. I don't really think he'll be there in the 4th round. But his pro day didn't hurt him. He didn't sink. He didn't fall in draft rankings. If anything, he probably leaped up a couple boards just from pure athletic numbers. Another guy that didn't have as great of a pro day is Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle from Michigan. Their big 330 nose tackle, played up front next to Mason Graham, who's probably going to be a top 10 pick this year. But this kid's a good player in his own right. Big body on the D-line, hard to move, good run stopper. However, did not have a great performance in Ann Arbor for his pro day. He was telling scouts in Indianapolis that he was going to run a 4.840, ended up running a 5.11, which wasn't really solid. Obviously, that number matters less for defensive tackles, but it is interesting that also his short shuttle and his 3-cone drills were really poor numbers as well. His best number overall was his vertical, which was a 31-inch, which was only in the 80th percentile of defensive tackles. So, did not test great. Said he was probably going to test a little better than he ended up doing. And his range is really going to be interesting to see, because this is a guy that a lot of coaches loved just from the on-field, the tape, the ability to plug holes in the run defense. But he didn't test great, not a great athlete, a little overweight for the position. And he has a really big draft range right now. I think he could probably go anywhere from late round 2 to 4th or 5th round. So he could kind of be a mover in day 2, day 3, and just what happens there, especially just given the depth at this year's defensive tackle class. Not a lot of high-level D-tackle prospects, but a lot of guys that are, really solid day 2 players, but some have them late round 1 guys like Walter Nolan, Derek Harmon, a couple guys like that. But this is a really solid DT class overall. So Kenneth Grant could drop, just depending on how the boards shake out, what happens with what happens in the draft, especially on day 2. On the flip side, JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State had a really great performance in his combine, or in his pro day, sorry. He had a 35.5-inch vertical, 9-foot 11-inch broad jump, 4.38 short shuttle, and 24 reps on the bench press. These are really, really good numbers all around. They kind of highlight why he was a 5-star recruit, why he was so highly sought after by Ohio State, and, just the elite status of his athletic ability, just that alone. He also really has good length for the position. His arms were almost 35 inches, and his wingspan was 81.5 inches, which are both really, really good numbers. It's going to be interesting to see him compared to his teammate Jack Sawyer, who Jack Sawyer probably was a little more productive overall in college, but JT Tuimoloau, better athlete than Jack Sawyer, and also probably has a little higher potential in the pros, especially when you look at his performances against Penn State in past recent years. He seems to play really well against Penn State, where he's taken over games. He's taken over games on the defensive end, and this is a guy that's probably going to be a 2nd rounder, maybe a 3rd rounder, but I could see him progressing and being a really solid NFL starter and potentially being a double-digit sack guy. Guy who didn't have as great of a pro day, Miami's wide receiver, Xavier Restrepo. And so he's only 5'10", little slot receiver. Obviously, slots are known more for their quickness than for their, straight line speed. But he ran a 4.8 140, which is really, really poor number for wide receivers for that position. And it kind of calls into question his status as an NFL prospect. Obviously, this is a guy that was highly productive in college, had a really good career with Miami, but will that translate to the next level? It remains to be seen. The thing that does kind of save him a little bit is he did have really solid numbers in the 3-cone drill and the short shuttle, which kind of highlighting that quickness, the little burst, the agility coming out of the cut. So that bodes well for him because his career in the NFL will be based on what he can do in the slot, how much he can create separation, how quick he can get off routes, and really his route running in general. Another guy that had a really good pro day was Mike Green, looking to be the first rounder out of Marshall in a long time. And this kid's probably going to be a top 20 pick. A lot of places I've seen have him going to the Falcons at 15, DNs coming off the edge, and there's a reason that he's that highly regarded. He ran his 3-cone drill at 6.85 seconds, which that is in the 98th percentile for defensive ends, for edge rushers. At 98th percentile, that's pretty incredible, especially when we consider all the athletes at that position and just the guys that how athletic they have to be able to rush the passer and do it consistently. Having a number that puts you in the 98th percentile of those guys is really impressive. He also ran a 4.25 short shuttle, which again was in the 92nd percentile. So this is a guy that has elite quickness, elite burst off the edge, can really win off of speed rushes. What's going to be the thing with Mike Green is, can he develop his pass move set a little more and not rely purely on speed, purely on athleticism? Can he build that technique out a little bit to where he's a much more well-rounded pass rusher and can really do some damage in the NFL? Michael Williams from Georgia was another guy that didn't have a great pro day, another projected first rounder. And he's been compared a lot to Trayvon Walker, the former number 1 overall pick, current Jacksonville Jaguar, also former Georgia Bulldog. But he ran a 4.75 40, a lot slower than Trayvon Walker did. However, Aiden Hutchinson, the number 2 pick that year, he ran it in 4.75. So, obviously comparable numbers. The one thing with Michael Williams that needs to be seen is his agility numbers. Those haven't been published. And those 2 prospects I just compared him to, the Trayvon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson, those guys both had elite short numbers and agility numbers. So can't compare them there. We don't know that data, but not a great number for Michael Williams to run in the 40. Another guy that his pro day is kind of up and down was Cam Scatabo. Had a really solid combine. He jumped a 39.5-inch vertical. He had a 10.3 broad jump, both really good numbers. But he did have a 4.65 40 at his pro day this year. Honestly, kind of made a lot of sense. Wasn't a great time, but he wasn't projected to be a burner, a guy that was gonna outsprint everybody. His tape shows, Cam Scatabo's game is based off of toughness, off of effort, off of finding quick holes, and just leg drive, being able to keep his legs moving consistently so that he does not get stopped. Really similar to Nick Chubb in that aspect, where their legs are always driving, even if they're 3 yards behind the field, wrapped up by 4 defenders. Those legs are still moving, still trying to get yardage. That's a lot what Cam Scatabo's like. And it makes a lot of sense that his 40 time wasn't great. There's still going to be a role for him in an NFL backfield. Not sure if that's as a lead back, but definitely short yardage. Definitely a guy that you can give the ball in certain situations too. And so now we're going to take our second break of the show. And when we come back, we're going to touch on some of the recruits that have already been announced for next year's Navy All-American game. Some of them have just come out. So we're going to talk a little bit about those guys and get into that a little bit. So we'll be right back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast. And after touching a little bit on some of the pro day performances by some of this year's draft prospects, we're going to switch gears a little bit, take it a little younger, and we're going to look at some of the guys that have already been announced for the 2026 Navy All-American game. Only 7 or 8 guys have been announced so far. They're obviously going to add more as we go along, but I just want to talk about some of the guys that we're going to see in next year's game that have already been announced. So first up, we have Elijah Harmon. He's a D tackle from Inglewood, California. Big guy, 6'3", 280, but he's young still. He's a 2027 class, so he's still got a ways to go, but he's a big space eater in the middle, and he's going to be one of the rare 4-year starters at Inglewood. Doesn't really happen a lot. It's a pretty solid program out in California, and it's really impressive that he's been able to start there for all 4 years, or he will be able to. Obviously, he's going into his junior year this year. So the one thing about him, he plays with some heavy hands. This is a kid that knows how to use his frame, knows what to do with it, and he really has to be doubled almost every single play. This is a kid that's going to be a nationwide recruit. Obviously, it's kind of tough sometimes. California has a lot of those guys that are big D-tackle prospects, but this kid is truly an elite nationwide prospect. He's kind of been offered by a lot of teams across the board, hasn't really gotten into where he's looking at or narrowed down his decisions at all, but some of the places that have offered him have been Florida, Auburn, Michigan, Notre Dame, Texas, Oregon, just among some. I think I want to say he has around 20 or 25 right now. So that's a kid to look at for the future. Obviously, could be a really elite 2027 prospect. Not going to sign in this year's upcoming class, but still somebody to look at. George Toya is another D lineman from Fontana, California, plays in San Diego at Summit. And this kid, he's a little shorter, he's 6'2", but 300 pounds. Big space here in the middle. Also being recruited nationwide right now. So Missouri and Tennessee are expected to be on his list, as well as Oregon, Texas, UCLA. He plugs holes really well in the run game. This is a kid that eats up a lot of space, and it's really tough to run against him up in that middle. He's already got a really strong frame for the next level of football. Could be a guy that's able to come in and play early at a program. Again, also a 2027 recruit. So this is a kid that has 2 more years to add onto his frame to improve, and probably a guy that's going to be able to step in week 1 as a freshman in college and really help and contribute to a program. He's got a really strong motor, and he's got a really quick first step, especially for a kid that's that size, and it really helps him impact plays at the line of scrimmage. Just also extremely, extremely promising considering his age. This is a kid that's advanced beyond his years right now, and a kid that's going to keep improving, and somebody to look out for on the national level in the next few seasons. Switching sides of the ball, we're going to talk a little quarterback. Dia Bell has committed to the 2026 Navy All-American game. This kid is a quarterback from Fort Lauderdale, plays for American Heritage, which is really one of the elite programs in the country. They played a really tough schedule every single year, and even with that tough schedule, he has been 19-4 as a starter, kind of highlighting that he contributes to winning football, to winning play, and that he is just able to win as a quarterback, which is always something that you want to look at and you want in your quarterback, in that person that's going to lead your offense. Fun fact, he's the son of former NBA player Rajay Bell, so obviously comes from an athletic family. He's got a good frame. He's 6'2.5", 215, but he does have 10-inch hands already, which are really, really big size. So those kind of suggest that there might be a little more growth in his future. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being 6'4", 6'5". And this is a kid that's really crafty as a quarterback. Well-rounded quarterback, can make a lot of plays. He's cool under pressure, just able to produce in clutch situations in games where his team needs him to perform. He does show a lot of touch on his deep balls. He's able to place them really well, but he just needs to improve, like a lot of young quarterbacks. He's got to improve on going through progressions, on getting past that first read or the second read. It's something that a lot of young quarterbacks struggle with. It's something that comes with time. And even still at the college level, you see a lot of guys that can't really go through progressions that well. Right now, he is a hard Texas commit. His only scheduled visit is Texas in the summer, so it looks like he's probably going to end up being a Texas guy. And he also has shown year-to-year improvement just in his raw numbers. Had a really big jump from 2023 to 2024 as a starter in terms of passing yards and passing touchdowns. This is a kid that's probably going to keep improving, and he could be the starting quarterback for the Longhorns in the next 3 or 4 years. Another quarterback to look at is Landon Duckworth. He's from Jackson, Alabama. Plays for Jackson High School, who won a 4A state title this year in Alabama. This is a kid that's a true dual threat quarterback. He's 6'3", 190. He can use his whole body, though. He led Jackson to an 11-1 record in 2023 as a sophomore, led them to the state championship this year as a junior, and he can really do a lot. Especially, he really turned it up in 2024 compared to 2023 in his individual performance. Obviously, it impacted the team as well. But just listen to some of these numbers from 2024. 3,500 passing yards, 39 pass touchdowns, only 10 interceptions. Additionally, he also had 650 rushing yards and 12 rushing touchdowns. So if you're keeping track, that's 51 total touchdowns this kid accounted for during his 2024 season. Able to contribute to winning in a number of different ways. Obviously, he's able to make plays with his arm, got a really big arm, a lot of arm strength there. But this is a kid that can extend and make plays with his legs. He's been looked at by a couple different schools. Ole Miss is really trying to get him. They've made him their number one priority. He's visited there previously. Also, South Carolina, Florida State, North Carolina are all still kind of in the mix for him. But it looks like Ole Miss is really, really going to go all out for Landon Duckworth. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in Oxford just because of everything I've been hearing out of Oxford that they really want this kid. And they need a quarterback bad in the 26th class. So it really seems like they're going to make him a priority and really make them his number one target. And then also, another reason that Jackson won the state title is Landon Duckworth's teammate, his running back, his backmate field, Xavier Crowell. He's going to the 2026 Navy All-American game too. This is a kid that reclassified from 2027 to 2026. This is a consensus top 5 running back in the country. Doesn't matter what class, this guy's got the talent. The past 2 seasons, he's ran for over 3,700 yards, which is crazy, especially when you think about Landon Duckworth threw for 3,500 yards this year, and Crowell had like 1,700 this season. So just pretty impressive that he's able to do that while sharing the backfield with an elite quarterback prospect. He's also got a little bit of dual threat ability. Not a lot, but he has showcased it. This past season, he's had, over his 2 seasons as a starter, he's had 500 receiving yards, 6 catching touchdowns. So not huge numbers, but definitely he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He is well-rounded enough, and that's probably something that coaches at the next level are going to try to work on him with to make him a better player all around and just be able to be more available for them, especially in third down situations, just when they need a passing back on the field. This is a kid that can do it. He probably will at the next level. He's got a really powerful and compact frame, just makes him tough to take down. He's only 5'11". Obviously, running backs normally aren't that tall, but he is already 205. I wouldn't be surprised to see him up to like 220 by the time he's in college. And so right now his top 6 is Alabama, Florida State, Texas, Georgia, Auburn, and Ohio State. I'm thinking he's probably going to stay in state with either Alabama or Auburn. That's pure speculation, but it's really tough to see Alabama kids leave the state. A lot of times they either end up at Alabama or Auburn, especially when you look at, a couple years ago, Quinshon Judkins was an Alabama kid who grew up 20 minutes away from Auburn, and he fell right through their fingers. And obviously had a great career at both Ole Miss and Ohio State. So I could see those two programs really trying to put an emphasis on his commitment so that they can keep and retain that elite in-state talent in Alabama. And our last guy to look at for the All-American game is Shadarius Tootle. 157 tackles made in the 2024 season, 103 tackles in 2023, but 2023 he also had 10 sacks. So this is a kid that obviously is probably going to play linebacker, but he has the potential to play the edge too. He's currently an Auburn commit, but he is scheduled to visit Georgia, Florida, and Michigan, among others, this spring. So that's another kid that he's probably going to play linebacker, but just showcasing that he can rush the passer and he has put up those sack numbers before highlights his versatility and his ability as a defender overall. So we talked a little bit about that, and now we're going to take our third break of the show, and when we come back, we're going to do our last segment of possible Biletnikoff winners, guys who I think could be the nation's next best receiver, the best receiver for the 2025 season. So we're going to look at some names for that, and we're going to take a short break and be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, and we just touched on some of the recruits that are already committed to the 2026 Navy All-American game, and now we're going to get into a little bit of wide receiver play and guys at that position that I think could really be a Biletnikoff winner, or at least a candidate to win the Biletnikoff this season. First up on my list, I have the freshman phenom, Jeremiah Smith. Obviously plays for Ohio State. This kid's a stud. Was the highest rated receiver recruit in his class, number one receiver in the country, consensus top 3 player in the country overall. This kid is a freak, 6'3", 210, and just came into Columbus already being elite in college. He was 4th in the country this past season. He had 1,300 receiving yards, and he also had 15 touchdowns. Just a great all-around player, all-around athlete. And he became the go-to receiver pretty early into the season. Definitely by the midway point of the season, this was Ohio State's go-to guy. This was who Will Howard was looking for on crucial downs, on 3rd and longs, on times he needed to make a big play. He looked to Jeremiah Smith. And he is losing Will Howard this year at quarterback, but I think his role and his importance to Ohio State is only going to increase this season. Emeka Egbuka is leaving for the NFL. That's a huge gap that's going to be left. Obviously, they still have elite talents behind Jeremiah Smith at wideout. You have Carnell Tate, Noah Ennis, former 4- and 5-star recruits that can play ball. These guys are still great wide receivers in their own right. But Jeremiah Smith, I think, is just going to have that much more of a role in this season for Ohio State, especially when you consider the loss of their backfield of both Keisean Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. This is a kid that's going to be producing, probably week in and week out. He will have a new quarterback, most likely going to be Julian Sayin, who, again, was a former 5-star in his own right, so not short on talent there. But this kid, he's not gonna falter. He's gonna be okay. He's gonna keep producing. He's probably only gonna get better. He's only gonna get older. He's only gonna get more experienced. And this is a kid that can definitely win it, even as a true sophomore. Next up, we got Jordan Tyson. Now, Jordan Tyson was Arizona State's leading receiver this year, had 1,100 receiving yards. It was a big reason for them being able to make the playoff, being able to go on the run that they did. He did have an injury in December that ended his season. He is supposed to be healthy for the start of this season year. He's a 6'1", 200 receiver, so not big, not small, kind of average, but he moves really well. He's able to find open space really well. And again, this is a kid that's his importance, his role in his team is only going to improve. It's only going to grow, especially after Arizona State loses Cam Scatabo, who was pretty much their heart and soul this past season, who carried the ball 25 times a game. So when you take away some of those carries and throw a couple more passes in, Jordan Tyson is someone who can really make some noise. Another sophomore now this year is Ryan Williams, freshman phenom from last year, just like Jeremiah Smith, but he kind of faltered. He had his start at the early part of the year where he really went off. He really showcased what he could do. He had the game against Georgia where he scored that touchdown right at the end. Had games where he certainly showcased his talent and why he was so highly recruited. And he's young too. This kid that's only 19 still. And he kind of did lose his momentum over the course of the year. He faltered a little bit, just probably from being so young and not having to deal with that grind yet of the college season. However, even with that turbulent year, he still had 860 receiving yards this year. Especially when you combine that with Jaden Milroe's struggles as a passer, with Alabama's just overall struggles on offense, on defense. Their just team overall did not have the caliber of year that they are expected to in Tuscaloosa. I also think another thing to look at with Ryan Williams is just Ryan Grubb coming back into the Kalen DeBoer coaching tree. He obviously coached with DeBoer at Washington, was the offensive coordinator when they went on the national championship run with Michael Penix. And I really think that he could help Ryan Williams' game a lot. I think you're probably going to see a little more passing, a little more open concept stuff from Alabama on offense. And I really think that that's something that's going to help Ryan Williams progress and keep going, keep contributing as a player. I believe that he's somebody that can definitely go on a run, especially if Alabama's offense takes a little longer to warm up, to get accustomed to the new scheme. I could see him being a guy that kind of takes off after midseason and kind of runs with it. Another guy to look at is Elijah Surratt. This was Indiana's leading receiver from last season. He was absolutely integral to Indiana's surprise run. Obviously made the playoff this year in Curt Cignetti's first season. And he can definitely improve on his season last year. He had 950 receiving yards, which obviously is still a good chunk. But I think that another year in that offense, and also the addition of transfer quarterback Fernando Mendoza, can really help Surratt. I think Fernando Mendoza is probably a much better quarterback than Curtis Rourke. Obviously, Curtis Rourke did not have a bad year last year. He put up pretty solid numbers last year and the year before. But I think that Indiana's ceiling with Fernando Mendoza is higher. I think that he's a gamer that can make a lot of plays. He obviously had some clutch games for Cal this past season, had some great performances against Miami. This is a kid that can really play ball. So I think that Elijah Surratt, combined with Fernando Mendoza and another surprise run by Indiana, can really make some noise for the Blitnikoff. And then my last guy to look at is Antonio Williams. This is Clemson's leading receiver from past season. He doesn't have ideal size for the position. He's only 5'11", 190, but he's able to really find separation easily in the routes he runs. He's got clean routes. And this is a guy that had 900 receiving yards last year, had 11 touchdowns. And I think the other thing that is interesting about him is he's kind of a threat out of the backfield too. They started to kind of scheme with it last year where he had 7 carries in the backfield last season. Not a lot, but 7 carries for 100 yards. He had a 36-yard rushing touchdown. So it's a guy that's got a lot of versatility that Clemson can move around in their formations. He can play the X, can play the slot, can play in the backfield. This is a guy that can do a lot of different things. And the other thing, too, with Clemson is the presence of incumbent quarterback Cade Klubnik, probably top 2 or 3 returning quarterback in the country this season. This guy that he's got experience with, chemistry with, and just another season together could really make things click. And Antonio Williams could go off and have another great season and potentially be a guy that could win the Blitnikoff if everything kind of goes the way it should for him. And with that, we are going to close out our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC College Football Podcast. We really appreciate your support, your ongoing viewership, and just remember to please subscribe, please like, and we also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok for more content and more updates. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to